Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of your time since it's 1. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB, so I'm helping coordinate our daily webinars. I hope you can join us each day with different topics. So today we have Financial Friday. It's how to hold effective meetings with clients and teams just to save you that time and money, of course, as a business owner. And we have Tracy Bullock from Sandler Training. She has over 30 years of business development experience to Sandler Training business. She also builds and delivers programs for the company of all sizes, multiple industries, including medical, IT, software, consumer product goods. She also had a career of 30 years with Procter & Gamble and customer business development, and she also developed sales and management teams, growing individuals' performances and coordinating cross-developmental strategic planning with top consumers in the US and also globally. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Faustine, and welcome everybody. Happy Friday. It's been an interesting, long week full of opportunity and probably full of different ways to go about delivering business. So when Faustine and I talked about bringing a series of presentations to you that would look like help, hopefully, to not only navigate internally to keep productivity up and therefore revenues, but also to talk about how you reach out to your clients and to other people using a virtual environment, because managing our business virtually looks and feels a lot different than managing it face-to-face. So our first session was all about how do you set up technology to deliver the best experience. We were talking about welcoming people into our offices, our virtual offices, the same way we welcome them into our business office. Today, we're going to focus on how you actually hold an effective meeting and what kind of steps and things you need to keep track of in order to make it a great experience. Next week, we'll follow up with engagement. How do you keep people engaged and involved during a meeting itself? And then we'll follow up with coaching for the right behaviors, holding people accountable in an environment where you're not sitting next to them or can't walk down the hall to check. So with no further ado, let me go ahead and kick us off. We're going to talk about, if the world's changed, how meeting preparation, actually getting ready to meet with people, becomes even more imperative. If you think about how we typically meet today, it's scheduling a meeting room, or maybe, saying, hey, can you get together, and meeting in a common area, having an idea of what you'd like to talk about, but maybe not a formal agenda. So what we're going to talk about are the steps that actually in a virtual environment can make that work even better for you. And it really is about 8 different steps to have the consistent, predictable meetings you're looking for without losing people's attention and making sure that you're delivering what you set out to deliver. So during our last conversation or presentation, we really talked about how effective communication is really essential for keeping our clients happy, as well as talk internal and external clients, right? Because your internal teams are as big of a client in this environment, especially as your external teams, and how you can continue to prospect and acquire business in times like these. Now, advances in Zoom meeting, GoToMeeting, WebEx, as well as some of the technologies you're probably using in your own business, have made this whole process pretty easy and a lot more feasible. But frankly, we need to learn to manage the meetings and use the tools in an effective manner, because just because they're there doesn't mean we know how to use them. And we're really all focused on delivering that productivity that helps us attain our goals and reach our strategies, regardless of the environment we're working in. No business owner I've talked to this week or last said to me, geez, Trace, our goals are changed because of the environment, because financial commitments have been made. And so now they're having to learn to work differently. Somebody just talked to me about the 3-bucket rule. 20% of folks are fighting for new ways to get work done. Those are the folks like you who are investing in yourselves and the skill set of you, your company, and your people in order to battle through what this new thing might look like. 60% of folks want to do something, but they're just searching for ways to get it done. It's also folks like you who are coming to the BBB and saying, hey, Faustine, show us ways that we can get this done. It's the Better Business Bureau putting together programs exactly like these to enable you to do that. The other 20% are the folks that are just going to wait it out and see what happens on the other end. And unfortunately, if you're not part of the decision becomes made for you. So we're really going to be taking a look at how we stay in front of things. I wanted to give you a little feel for what all of us have probably experienced and what we're trying to avoid today. Do you ever have a situation that looks just like this, where people aren't prepared for the meeting, their technology doesn't work, they maybe have their dogs in the background, they're trying to do it from a coffee shop? So what we talked about last week was really prepping ourselves for the type of meeting you want to have, and a pre-call plan is more important than ever. Typically, I would talk about pre-call planning from a management or leadership perspective and a sales perspective. But if you think about it, having a plan for a meeting is more important than ever before, because it involves several different things. Not only what are you going to wear, because people, if you have your video on, are going to see you from the waist up, but obviously the environment you're working in, whether or not your technology works. Having a clear set of agenda topics and understanding the purpose was a big piece of what I talked about during our last session. And being able to invite people in, accepting invites, and making sure that all the essential folks are there so decisions can be made, so you're not meeting to have a meeting to get ready for the other thing that you're going to do. So we talked about making sure that the details are in the invite. One of the most important pieces of it is to make sure the purpose of the meeting is very clear. It's included in the subject line. The time and date, checking your time zones. There's a lot of folks here on the call who might work across different time zones. So making sure our time zone is set correctly to Arizona will make sure that as everybody else goes on daylight savings time, they are meeting at the appropriate time. Sending out a reminder, or instead copying the meeting invite into a calendar invite and sending it through company mail, is another really effective way to send out a reminder. Making sure people understand what technology is going to be available, how they should use it, and if it's not on their computer, to make sure they come in about 15 minutes early to either join in a public forum or to download the app. We want to have what Sandler we call an upfront contract in our meeting request. And I'm going to explain to you what that looks like in a second. We're also going to make sure that the audience we've invited are folks that need to be there or that really want to have input into the discussion. So many times we either have hostages who are saying, why am I here? This doesn't pertain to me. Or we have people saying, why did you leave me out? I was just sitting in this instance at home or at my desk and would have preferred to have joined you versus hear about it after the fact. Obviously, distractions, and noise can be eliminated and are most effectively eliminated by using headsets, because even when people are typing and you have headsets in, you don't get that constant click of the keyboard. So let's talk about setting clear agenda and expectations for every meeting. Typically, when we show up for a meeting, we know how long it's going to be, and hopefully we know what the topic is. But in holding an effective virtual meeting in particular, but both in person as well as virtual, what we want to keep in mind is when people gift us with their time, or when they're showing up because they've accepted the calendar invite, we probably need to understand what's important for us as a host to make sure is met for them during their time. What are they expecting? And what looks like an outcome? What does success look like? Because typically the people who set the agenda are very clear about what's important to them, and they most likely know what an outcome is, but really keeping in mind as a host, What are you expecting from the people who are on the call? And have you made it clear to them, here's what the topic is, here's what the outcome is, and along the way, I'm going to expect each of us to sign in and accept different responsibility for actions, timelines, and outcomes, and then we'll figure out how we hold each other accountable. Setting clear agenda items and expectations will change the entire tone of the meeting. We've talked about testing technology internally, but you also need to make sure that the people on the receiving end, especially when folks are working from home, are able to do it. You have to be able to practice using technology. So for instance, with this presentation, having that embedded video, hopefully you enjoyed it. I needed a quick chuckle, and that really made me laugh because can't tell you how many times I've been on calls like that. But I had to learn how to share the sound through Zoom versus just through my computer. And it was nothing more than me going out and watching about a 1.5 minute Zoom help video, but I didn't know how to do it, and I had to learn to do it ahead of time so I wasn't stumbling through my presentation when you guys are waiting. A lot of people just aren't very patient with technical fails. Goes without re-mentioning that we need to check how the sound's coming through, echoing, speakers, whether you're using computer audio or telephone. Why do we need to make it appealing? Why do people want to be engaged? They only retain 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they say or read, but they retain 80% of what they see because most of us are visual learners. Over 65% of us, in fact, and 90% of the information our brain takes in, processes in a microminute, and gives us signals and messages from, is all visual. So making sure that you don't just talk through a point, but you engage with people on the spot, either through pictures, by taking notes on the whiteboard, as I showed you last time, or well, actually, did I show you? I don't know if I showed you how to do whiteboard stuff last time. Can somebody let me know whether or not I showed you how to do a whiteboard?
You did, but we can go through it again for those of us who didn't attend. So we have quite a few that didn't attend last session. So
perfect. So if I wanted to engage with people about what was happening, here. What you do is you go to share, you download it. I click whiteboard and hit share there. And I can literally start taking notes about this is our action plan and key owners. And then we can bullet it. You can go ahead and take all your notes in this session and press save. And it downloads immediately as a PNG file, which is like a picture file that can go out as meeting notes so you don't have to duplicate work. The reason I want to make sure that we check in with people, because people check out, this is what happens in a distracted environment. This is what happens when people think they can get away with it. I laughingly tell my children on a regular basis that they need to put their cell phones away because nobody sits and smiles at their lap for 30 minutes straight, right? They think they're fooling me by having the technology or their cell phones underneath the table when clearly I know that that's not the case. During work meetings, this is what happens. 30% of folks are working on other projects, trying to quote unquote multitask. 24% are surfing the web. Over a fifth are checking social media. I'd say 18% are thinking about vacation, but really what they're thinking about is what can we do when we get to get out of the house, when we can actually take a vacation, when we can get away. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Because I am sick and tired of reading the news. Some people even shop online during work meetings. So by engaging people during a meeting, which we'll be talking about, the entire topic for our next get together is on engagement, by making sure we talk to them the way they need to hear us, we poll them, P-O-L-L, their opinions, and we get people to participate in breakout sessions, that's the way we make sure that they're checking in to keep them from checking out.
Hey, Tracy, can you switch your screen back to the slides? We're only seeing the meeting Zoom on the screen.
Oh, sorry. Yep, of course I can. End the slideshow. Go to Zoom. Thank you for telling me that. There we go. You see that?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So there's the information I was just talking about. 30% on projects, almost a quarter surfing the web, 20% doing social media or dreaming about where they're going to go when they can finally get out of their house, and the rest of them are distracted with reading other things or shopping. Amazon surfing, I call that. So in order to be sure that we keep people from checking out, we want to make sure that conversations are centered around the topics we agreed to discuss. In other words, we want to keep the purple squirrels from flying through the room, and we don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole. The way to do that is to make sure the conversation continually comes back to what's the purpose of us being here. Being efficient with time. As you notice, Faustine started this call right on time, because there's nothing that irritates people more than holding up a meeting for one more person to get there, or we're just waiting for this. Well, you might keep 30 people waiting, so the 2 that said they were going to come and I'll be there in a minute haven't joined yet. It's their responsibility either be on time or to catch up later, versus the other 30 people that are on the phone on time and waiting. We want to make sure that we're considerate of other business demands that may change priorities. Good example of this, I did the same presentation yesterday in a public forum. Not one through Better Business Bureau, but just one I'd put out. The first time I had, oh gosh, a ton of people. And then this second session, 23 people had signed up. I waited for about 3 to 5 minutes and only 3 people came. That doesn't mean that the other 20 weren't interested in what was going on. It means that there were other demands from their companies, from maybe, I mean, they're stuck at home trying to, if they have a partner in the house, either both of them are working or they're both trying to take turns being teachers and parents at the same time. So we need to be considerate. And that's why Faustine, as a matter of fact, is recording this, because there are people who signed up who wouldn't be able to join, or people who want to have this information going forward. And again, their demands on their business or their demands with their family wouldn't allow it. Now, this is a situation we're facing, not forever, but for now. And I don't know of many situations where I'm talking with business people about how they're juggling homeschooling. So when we are thinking about the folks who are joining us, keep in mind that being on topic, on time, and being empathetic to how people feel about the situation would be key to, I'd say paramount, to maintaining a relationship and building a relationship that you may not have had before. One other tactic I like to take is using a bike rack or a parking lot for issues that might come up. So there are important issues that come up during meetings that have nothing to do with the purpose of the meeting, or maybe an ancillary topic in and of itself. Please don't lose that concept. You could have a second whiteboard that's called parking lot. Everybody can see it and add to it, and you go back and forth between the different whiteboards. But the most frustrating thing I find for people face-to-face or virtually is they've brought up something. The moderator, the presenter, the facilitator, or the host, whatever you want to consider it based on the type of meeting, will say, that's a great point. Let me put it on the parking lot and we'll get to it. Please hold me accountable for making sure your stuff gets answered. And then they never go back to it. They never check, and they never ask people if their needs have been met, which was our contract at the beginning of a meeting. So it makes that person's thought process seem a little less important, number one, or number two, why bring anything up it's never going to get addressed anyway. So I want to make sure, because we can't really see everybody's faces in a situation like this, we want to make sure that the needs of the group are being met without taking us off topic. And whatever items are left on a parking lot that weren't addressed, we make a plan to address them, either a one-off or at our next meeting. Probably the most important part of any, I'd say, forget meeting, I'd say any interaction is the follow-up. Because if we agree to some action steps, we also want to agree on how we're going to follow up, the timing, etc. And it sounds like this. I'm happen to be hosting the meeting, but Faustine is our moderator. She set the meeting up. She's keeping us on time. She is the one that let me know that the screen share wasn't working. Those are the folks that are moderating the experience that other people in the room, the virtual room, are having. Sometimes you'll have people take notes separately from the whiteboard. It might be a specific way that you have for critical pathing. It might be project notes. It could be how you as a company want to engage with others, or a process that you've developed. So you want to have notes taken in the way that your team has agreed to see the input from the meeting and the agreed to output from the actions. Before you end the meeting, make sure you summarize, either the person who's taking notes or you as a moderator, summarize what people have agreed to and what you as a moderator or a host has agreed to provide. We're recording this call, so we wouldn't have a need to transcribe, but we do need to post notes on here's what was said, here's what was going on, here's our next steps for clear actions. Clear, firm future commitments is a pet peeve of mine when people don't have them. So typically when we're setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound, and keep in mind I said actionable, not achievable, because I want to take firm action. I want to move something from where we are to where we want to be. All 5 of those steps include, when are we going to do it? The time frame that we're going to get it done. And then what's going to happen? Who are your action owners? Who's agreed to do it? But more importantly, here's one of my favorite questions for accountability. What should I as a manager, what should I as your leader, what should I as your project peer do if you're not done, or if I haven't received the information by the time we've agreed? If I haven't received it, what should I do from there? Because that does 2 things. It lets somebody know in a very kind way that there's an accountability factor in both the meeting action steps as well as the one-on-one actions. But it also lets them tell you how they want to be reminded. And last but not least, a list of everybody who's been on the call would be really important, because frankly, how many times have you heard, we talked about it at the last meeting, and you recognize, I wasn't at that. Yes, you were invited. Well, no, you weren't. You probably know if you were invited. And it starts that conflict, maybe a little undercurrent of, you never invite me anywhere, when a clear list of attendees of who was in the room would have answered that and taken care of the issues from the start. So I developed this entire series, and as I said, it's a 4-part series, really as a way that I could give back. I realized that we're in an environment right now where we're forced to use technology in a different way. Now, many of you might be very, very well versed, and this whole session was just a check in the box that you're doing what you need to do to both host an effective meeting as well as use technology in a virtual environment to do it. Others will say, holy cow, there's a lot of things I'm not even doing when I plan a meeting, let alone whether we're face-to-face or virtual. And then there's a third group that said, this was nice to know, but don't need to know anymore. For the folks who want to continue to go down the path of engaging more with a virtual platform, our next session that Faustine and I are going to host is on the 3rd, so a week from today, and we're going to talk about engagement. We're going to talk about how you get people with different communication styles involved in a conversation, how you have people from different departments with different goals set out, how you capture that information. Additionally, because we're all Better Business Bureau members, I wanted to offer something that I asked for and Sandler gifted me, and that's a complimentary, what do you want to call it, subscription between now and the end of May to our virtual management solutions class. I've listed the 12 topics, and some may apply to you, some may not, but through May or till the 1st of June, they're on me. So if there's anything here that looks like help, I'll give you my email at the end. Please let me know. I'm happy to sign you up. You'll get a welcome email from me, and it will walk you through how to self-subscribe to learn any of these things. There's podcasts, there's training. If there's something on there you don't have and you need help with, don't be shy, reach out, holler. On my LinkedIn and on Sandler.com LinkedIn, as well as the stuff the Better Business Bureau is putting out, there's all kinds of great articles, blogs, and current best approaches on ways to kind of navigate through times that are changing, sometimes hourly. Now, I promised it's 1:30 straight up, and Faustine and I talked that we were going to open up the phone lines in case there are any questions or concerns. I can hang out an additional 15 minutes. If you have them, I want to show everybody, in case you have to hang up, here's my contact information. So it's Tracy with no E, .Bullock, like Sandra, but not the same family, at Sandler.com. That's my one number. So it'll get me at home, it'll get me at work, it'll get me on the road. But for those of you who are going to drop off, I wanted to say thank you. Please be safe and don't hesitate to reach out if I can help you with other topics. And for other folks, let us know if there are any questions about this topic or other things that Faustine and I can answer.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of call-in listeners. So if you called in, you don't have access to these slides, we will post this recording with the slides on our website. So just check for it probably sometime next week. It's events.bbbcommunity.org. Those will all be posted on there, all the webinars and also the upcoming webinars. So if anybody has any questions, please type them in the chat option or the Q&A. If you want to raise your hand and want to speak and you have a microphone, we can actually unmute you so you can talk and ask Tracy your question as well. We do have one question that came in. It's about making sure that your group, their team group, does not go off on tangents when they start on meetings. So do you have any advice on how long the group can just check in with each other and just check about their wellness before actually diving into their meeting?
Absolutely. So here's what I like to say. Two things. I like to start every meeting and every training. So I do weekly reinforcement training, and every training starts with what I call VIPs, victories, impending opportunities or issues and problems. In this environment, I want to call it a check-in. And I say, okay, everybody, let's spend 2 minutes apiece telling us about some of the, and I start with gratitudes, things we're grateful for or opportunities you're seeing out there that you may not be looking for if we weren't paying attention. And then any struggles you're having that we may be able to work through during this meeting or weave into our topics. And then say, just for the sake of staying on time, I've planned 2 minutes apiece. You can, tell us how you are. If you go 30 seconds, awesome. But what that does is it either lets us get off the phone earlier or leaves us more time to have group discussion on topic. But you're very, very clear in how you're going to work with people and how you're going to set the stage for, oh, your 2 minutes are up. We can take this to a virtual happy hour. We can do something like that after the fact.
Great, and we have another question. What do you think about quick meetings, the 30-minute meetings that speed by really fast? Do they work? Are they effective?
Well, this was a 30-minute meeting, and I can tell you that it took me a couple hours to prep the slides because in order for it to work well, I had to think about what I wanted to present, how I wanted it to come across to you, and what the key points were. So they do, and in a virtual environment, I think shorter is better, but I can tell you as a host, it takes a lot longer to plan than it would if I was meeting in person. What are my favorite resources? Um, Luke, are you talking about resources like the format, the platform I'm using, or resources to make things visually appealing? So I love visually, for those who aren't opening the chat box, Luke has asked visually appealing. So there's a couple places I go to share some really fun, visually appealing stuff. So what I showed you, the clip I showed you from YouTube, I always go to YouTube and do funny clips about whatever the topic is. I never choose one that's over 2 minutes. That's my rule of thumb. If I'm going to use, for instance, during my mastery class today, sales mastery, I was actually using a 45-minute video. And what I did is I'd already seen it obviously, but I watched it ahead and figured out where along the way I was going to break it up to get interaction and activity for my crew. So it was somebody else speaking, then it was my face and their faces talking about application on it. Another great place for visually appealing stuff is free clip art. And there's a whole bunch of sites. If you can't find them, ping me and I'll send them to you. But free clip art is really, really fun for great pictures. So here comes a great question. In a virtual meeting with a time-sensitive project, do you assign someone to take on a task or ask for a volunteer? I ask for volunteers first simply because there are people who specialize in something or people who have a passion to get things done. Now, let me add some caveats to that. If somebody is trying to develop a skill, so we've met during a performance review and we've decided that they need to learn specific tasks, but it's time sensitive, I typically would partner people, somebody who knows how to do it with somebody who's learning how to do it. And why it slows it down a little bit, there's nothing like hands-on training and shadowing somebody to help both build skills from somebody who doesn't know how to do it and teach skills to somebody who has to break it down and teach it back, because that's how you learn most, is teaching back. Did they answer the question? Great, thanks. Any other questions? Oftentimes people stare at one another. The worst is they stare at themselves. It's really hard when you have your screen on not to look at yourself and see how you're coming across. What I can tell you is you want to keep staring at the green dot, and it's the most boring thing in the world. So I usually start looking at the people on the screen. So it would be like I was standing on stage and presenting, or standing in front of my classroom presenting. So I rotate between the different pictures so it looks like I'm not just staring at the screen or staring at myself. There's another funny video that's it. So the video clip I shared, I'm happy to share out, but it's called video conferencing in real life. And a woman's picking her pimple, somebody else is playing a game, somebody else is calling in from a car. And at the very, very end, the host says, "Thanks for sharing," stands up and he's in his underwear. It is hysterical. So it just goes to speak to, you really have to understand when you're sharing, when you're not sharing, and what you're sharing. Oh, Luke, one other thing I want to add to your question about favorite resources is it's pushing the envelope from an HR perspective to show somebody standing up in their underwear. So I would also make sure that it's appropriate to show a 5-year-old. if it's appropriate to say in front of a 5-year-old, if it's appropriate to share with a 5-year-old, then that would be my rule of thumb, because that usually keeps everybody out of HR jail. Anything else I can answer for folks? All right. Well, then it sounds, Faustine, like we have met at the end of the road on answering questions. I know this will be posted, and if people need help separately or would like to have access to the management program, please just let us know. Thanks so much,
Yes.
everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Once again, if you do need a copy of this recording, or if you want to view our upcoming webinars, it's all listed on our website. Just go to events.bbcommunity.org. But thank you everyone for attending. Please stay safe out there and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.